third overall. Total time, 7 hours, 54 minutes. The 43rd Annual Dog Derby is over. The Labatt trophies are distributed, the equipment is packed away. The racers rest. These are men of the North Country, men of courage and stamina who in racing remember and respect their heritage and this country's past. We today of this generation are seeing the last of the true frontiersmen, a race of men who in passing will turn the last page in the story of true adventure on this continent, closing forever the book of romance in Canadian history.
Thursday night, CTV presents The Arabia Incident, a fascinating report on the work done by researchers on this famous shipwreck from her watery grave in Georgian Bay.
This is the CTV Television Network.
Everybody wants a pool installed during those hot summer days. That's when the pressure is on everyone. But now, while things are quiet and no pressure is on, you'll get your pool installed within a week with Mermaid Swimming Pools. Unlike other dealers, Mermaid Pools is available for pool installation 12 months a year. And with Mermaid, you save money because you're dealing directly with the manufacturer. Avoid the summer rush. Order your pool now from Mermaid Swimming Pools with 4 stores to serve you. For more information, check the yellow pages.
If all you need is money, come on into HFC. Come on in, come on in, come on into HFC.
If money's all that's standing between you and the things you want to help you get the most out of life, well, that's where we come in.
Come on in, come on in, come on into HFC.
Household finance, where people use our money to get the most out of life.
Getaway, make your getaway from the city heat.
Getaway with a Johnson.
Getaway, make your getaway to a place in the sun with number one. Getaway. Go with a Johnson. Go with a Johnson.
For 50 years, more people in the world have been getting away with Johnsons than with any other outboard.
I'd like to introduce the team at Petrick Ford. Parts manager, Paul Smith. Leasing manager, Rick Tammon. Service manager, Al Lee. Sales manager, Rick Cruikshank. Used car manager, Joe Petrick. And our quarterback, Tom Clemens.
The best place by far to buy your next car is right here from the winning team at Petrick Ford. Why, we'll even give you the shirt off our back.
And if that's not enough,
oh, no. Come on out and see us.
CJOH Television, Cable 7 in the Ottawa Hull area.
Good evening, I'm Bruce Page with the Saturday edition of Newsline. Tonight, the Shah's sister is reported imprisoned in Iran. A former premier is executed. The Consumers Association of Canada responds to airfare increases, and the American Nuclear Regulatory Commission assesses the future of 3 Mile Island. The NRC's chief spokesman, Frank Ingram, said today Metropolitan Edison may lose its license to operate the utility because preliminary findings indicate major violations of safety regulations. Any action against the company will have to wait until the NRC completes its final investigation. A panel of American nuclear experts today accused the Carter administration of telling only half the truth about radiation dangers from the Harrisburg plant. The panel's spokesman said the government estimate that people near the plant received only 80 millirams did not include what was in the air they were breathing.
There is no question that this 80 milliram mentioned is only an approximation for the external dose and underestimates the true dose to the lung, the gonads, the organs of the most critical nature like the bone marrow by anywhere from 10 to 100 times, depending on the exact composition, as far as yet unknown in exact detail, of the gases released.
And the scientists claim those gases may have contained deadly elements such as strontium-90, which can cause cancer even in low doses. Former Prime Minister Hoveyda, leader of Iran for 13 years under the Shah, was executed today by the new Islamic government. A statement released after his death claimed Hoveyda had accepted all the allegations made against him by the Revolutionary Court and that he called himself a victim of the system. Another report out of Tehran says that one of the Shah's sisters was put in jail today, but Iranian officials deny that allegation flatly. What's happening in Uganda tonight? Those who know can't tell. All telephone and cable communications in that country have gone dead. The only information reaching neighboring Kenya at this hour is that all Libyan troops sent to help Idi Amin from Tanzanian invaders have flown out of the country. The infamous African leader has vowed to remain in Kampala in spite of the opposition forces who now claim to have encircled the capital city. The Consumers Association of Canada says only a complete deregulation of the Canadian airline industry will provide the much-needed relief for the domestic air travelers. Only yesterday, the CAC lost its two-week battle with the air carriers to prevent a 5% hike in airfares. Lee Chappell reports.
The approval of a 5% fare hike by the Canadian Transport Commission climaxed 2 weeks of intense arguments, first by Air Canada, CP Air, and the 5 major regional airlines. They cited higher fuel costs as the reason for the request, but the Consumers Association, opposing an increase for the first time since 1975, demanded to see their books, calling on the carriers to prove they had done everything possible to keep fares reasonable. They were refused, and the CTC, accepting the airline's justification, approved the application. But despite the defeat, the CAC feels some very interesting information about how the airlines operate came out in the hearing. For example, when Air Canada decides to apply for a fare raise, it meets with CP Air and secures an agreement on a set percentage.
They then call up the other airlines, the regional airlines. They don't ask them what they need. They tell them this is what your fare increase is going to be. After that, they all go back and they independently file with the Canadian Transport Commission for fare increases in identical amounts. It's price fixing. That's what happens.
That type of unhealthy situation will continue, says Infant, unless one of two things happens. Either there's closer, more effective regulation, which includes access to information on carriers' financial statements, or a complete deregulation of the industry and a return to competition. As it stands now, domestic passengers will continue to suffer.
They're certainly subsidizing those that travel in the North Atlantic and in other international markets. Air Canada is, in fact, primarily bringing on this fare increase proposal because they're not making as much money in the international field as they can because of competition there.
Isn't it ironic when the government is perhaps expounding that we should be traveling within Canada?
We think so. The balance of payment situation is a constant problem. Unemployment is. Both of those could be alleviated to some extent by having more Canadians travel in Canada.
There is one bright side to the story. The airlines had wanted the increases to come into effect last December, but they were postponed pending the outcome of the hearing. They went into effect today, but will not affect seat sale fares presently underway. Lee Chappell, CJOH News.
200 employees of Gananoque's Rockwell International are among the 40,000 auto manufacturing industry workers facing layoffs this week. Chrysler let go 11,000 of its employees last week Ford, GM, and client companies of the big three, like Rockwell, intend to follow that course of action. The cause for the massive layoff is a continuing strike-lockout confrontation between the U.S. trucking industry and the powerful Teamsters Union. Negotiations have broken down, no settlement is in sight, and the crisis is getting worse. In this country, the situation has led to a critical shortage of parts at Canadian auto plants. Until the truckers are back on the road again, chances are you'll have to soon shell out as much as 25% more for fruit and vegetables. Suppliers are trying to arrange alternate transportation, but increased costs of doing that are going to have to be passed on to the consumers. Hopes for a settlement in the Leeds-Grenville High School teachers dispute are hanging by a thread today. School board negotiators abruptly broke off talks at 4 a.m. this morning after an 18-hour marathon bargaining session. At that point, still outstanding was the issue of class size and teachers' wages. There has been no future date set for resumption of talks. Well, teachers plan to hold information meetings after school on Monday to discuss what action may be taken. The situation is also likely to be debated at Monday night's regular board meeting. 6,000 students attend the Leeds and Grenville Board's 7 high schools. On Lake Erie, that crippled Canadian ore carrier Labradock is under tow tonight, headed for Pelee Island off the Niagara Peninsula. Canadian Coast Guard officials said the ship is still listing to the port side, but it's not in any danger of sinking. At Pelee Island, ship owners plan to make any necessary repairs, redistribute the cargo, and hopefully send it back on its journey to Cardinal, Ontario. It was an exciting week at the Macdonald Commission, what with the man who was once responsible for the RCMP telling how he was misled and felt betrayed by the Mounties. With his impressions of the inquiry so far, here's Newsline's Lee Green.
As the week draws to a close, a victim of too many days of testimony can wonder if there are answers to the questions the Macdonald Commission set out to unravel. Who knew what concerning operations where the RCMP were offside? Well, different people knew different things, and nobody seems to remember all that much. Buckets of documents tell us where to find more documents, and in some cases can confirm or destroy the testimony of witnesses. But the naming of names, while important, begs away from what is becoming for some of us a nagging question. Can police break the law? In the context of national security, this is known as the inherent contradiction. The government says police shouldn't break the law, but bending it was all right, apparently. Cabinet agreed with interpretations of federal laws which allowed Mounties, without warrant or consent, to enter a private premise to take pictures or scribble notes. Microphones were planted, political parties spied upon, letters opened, human sources abused, citizens with a tendency away from the status quo were interfered with, confidential records examined illegally, and the list goes on. The Solicitor General of the day didn't know about all of them. He was misled about some and accepted enormously liberal legal interpretations about others. The RCMP were, it seems, prepared to play fast and loose with the civil liberties of Canadians in the interest of getting the job done. Enemies of the state must have been very pervasive indeed, judging by the reaction at headquarters. Quebec became the focus. The mission was to stop separatism. The bombs have stopped, but separatism has not. Should police, for any reason, be allowed to break the law? Perhaps that's a question to ask the candidate who's looking for your vote. Bruce?
A confidential Liberal election strategy paper depicts Prime Minister Trudeau as a priceless asset to the Western world and Joe Clark as too naive to lead the country at this time. The letter obtained by the Canadian Press was sent by Senator Keith Davey to all Liberal candidates, impressing upon them to focus public attention on leadership. Prime Minister Trudeau is the only leader pounding the pavement today. He's in Vancouver's Chinatown, later headed for Terrace, British Columbia, before coming home. Political analysts are predicting a significant gain by the New Democratic Party this time around, to the point where the NDP may again hold the balance of power. It would be a situation very familiar to former leader of the NDP, David Lewis. On CTV's Question Period, to be seen tomorrow at 5:30, Mr. Lewis was asked what minimum considerations the NDP should insist upon before supporting any party.
I would think that the resource matter that Mr. Broadbent is emphasizing, the retention of Petro-Canada and making it stronger, and perhaps even the nationalization of a company like Imperial Oil, so that a larger part of that resource is in public hands, plus some real tight safeguards for Medicare and others, plus some relaxation in the very undesirably harsh provisions in some of the welfare acts, like unemployment insurance. Some of those things will undoubtedly be in their minds. Exactly what will be decided, I don't know. But I think, having had one experience, if I were back there, I would make demands much tougher even than we made them last time, although I think we were not very soft last time either.
Leonard Jones, former mayor of New Brunswick, an independent MP since 1974, today announced his resignation from the House of Commons. The colorful politician was chosen as the Tory candidate in his riding back in '74, but Robert Stanfield rejected him as unsuitable to represent the party. Jones ran as an independent and won. He's quitting for personal reasons. There will be no casino tonight at the Nepean Sportsplex tomorrow. As advertised, the mayor says no way to one local promoter's plans.
In the halls, we've allowed various casinos, obviously, to go on. Basically, they are voluntary organizations, and in all cases use funny money, you know, a couple of $100,000 of monopoly type money, where people have had a good time playing with funny money, and at the end they bid on prizes. However, we don't feel that this facility should be used for hard gambling, and even if there is a technicality in the law, we don't feel that a public facility like this should be used for straight gambling.
Sensitizing adults to the needs of children was one of the aims of a conference held today. It was a series of 20 workshops put on by the Ottawa Valley Cooperative Preschools. Over 400 parents and teachers got together to share problems and solutions.
The one-day program of these displays and workshops has run for 7 years now, drawing enthusiastic participants from all over the valley.
The purpose is to stimulate the parents, to give them new ideas, to try to solve questions and problems that they have, just to give them maybe a new outlook on their parenting effects at home. Certainly to involve them in workshops and let them participate in such things as artwork and this kind of thing that they can do at home for their own children.
The workshops are led by specialists covering a variety of topics, from the practical, such as nutrition, to the philosophical, such as children's sexuality.
You have parents who are conservative, but you also have parents who are quite liberal, and it's the understanding that we're all different. So let me give you an example. Let's say that a child asks about where do babies come from. So I would have the parents share what they would answer to that and how they would deal about it.
This workshop is on cooperative games. They're learning a version of musical chairs where no one loses. Traditionally, those left without a chair must step out of the game, but here they go and sit on someone's lap until there's one chair with everyone trying to get on it. Not only does it keep everybody playing, it also offers the child some physical contact. All the workshops, such as this physical fitness class, offered adults a chance to discover new ways of approaching child education. It was an opportunity to reassess their own techniques with that little person at home in mind. Barbara Dundas, CJOH News.
If you've ever wondered what it would be like to be a child growing up in China, we'll tell you. We have a report along with the weather right after Brian Smith with sports.
Hey, you remember me? Little Clump, no charge? Hey, Winter, she said tough on me, tough on my exhaust. So I come here to the boys at Speedy Muffler for a free inspection. Free. Can you save more money than free? And if I need any repair, who's so bad, huh? So you come to the boys for a free inspection. The best thing in life, she's a Speedy. Meraviglioso.
That's the dream house, and I'm the builder. I'm even putting up the siding myself, using Abitibi siding. It's pre-finished hardboard and very easy to work with. That finish is rock hard. Abitibi siding is a system with all the right pieces, so it goes up quickly and it looks great. Look, if I can put up Abitibi siding, anybody can.
Abitibi siding. It's so beautifully simple.
little is known of the first people who came to the Swan Hills. They camped, hunted, and then were gone. Today, Esso Resources is helping trace those early times through a heritage research study that's linked to a new promise under the silent forest floor.
Coal. Coal important to Canada's energy needs. So while we always look to the future, we accept responsibility to the past.
Jennings, we're in the pink. Still fluffy. Good as new.
Very good, sir.
When I restored this house 20 years ago, I had bats and bats of fiberglass pink insulation put in, and it's still effective. People thought me a little strange then. Today, they just admire my foresight. Take my advice. When you insulate your home, do it right with fiberglass pink insulation. It never wears out.
Good evening. Just one game in the National Hockey League this afternoon, and it was a big game for the New York Islanders. In fact, Mike Bossy scored 4 goals as the Islanders beat the Philadelphia Flyers 9-2. Line-mate Brian Trottier picked up 3 assists, and that pretty well clinches the scoring title for him. That gives Trottier 132 points. Marcel Dion of the Los Angeles Kings is next at 125, followed by Guy Lafleur of the Canadiens with 123. Bob Bourne had a pair of goals for New York today. Wayne Merrick, Clark Gillies, and Bob Nystrom the others. Vervegaard and Barber replied for the Flyers. The win gives the Islanders the overall NHL lead with 114 points, 1 more than the Montreal Canadiens. The Islanders finish off the regular schedule tomorrow night with a game in New York against the Rangers. Montreal has 2 games remaining. The Canadiens host the Washington Capitals tonight, then wrap it up in Detroit on Sunday. They should win both games and take the overall title. The home ice advantage that goes along with that might turn out to be very, very important during the playoffs. There's a good chance the Islanders and the Canadiens will wind up meeting in the final. For Montreal, the key to beating the Islanders will be stopping their big line. Home ice will give Scotty Bowman the final line change, enabling him to get his checkers out against Bossy, Trottier, and Gillies. In the OHA last night, the Peterborough Petes got by the Sudbury Wolves 4-3 and now lead the 8-point semifinal 4 points to nothing. The series moves up to Sudbury tomorrow night. 88 athletes from across the country are taking part in the 2nd annual indoor games for the blind this weekend. And as Bill Patterson reports, visual impairment doesn't dull the athlete's sense of competition.
The 2-day event kicked off with track and field today. The swimming will be held tomorrow at the Brewer Park Pool. Today, long distances as well as sprints were featured on the track, with field events including the shot put and high jump. The top finishers hope to make the Canadian national blind team that will compete in the international level this summer. How did they achieve their goals competing without sight? Gord Hope explains.
The runners that you've seen running to a collar are Class A athletes or low vision Class B athletes. What this means is that these athletes have no or very little vision, not enough vision to be able to stay in their lanes on the track. So what happens then in this case is they're directed by a collar down the length of the track towards the voice of a collar. This is what happens in the sprint races. In the long distance races, which are run of course on an oval track, and in this event it's anything from 50 meters up, you have the Class A runners, or low vision Class B runners, that is those people with little useful vision at all, accompanied by a running guide. This is someone who they maintain contact with by keeping their hands on the person's arm or shoulder and maintain contact so they can be guided around the oval track. The field events in high jump, some of the people who have no vision or very little vision use a standing or a one-step high jump. However, some of them are very gutsy and they use a 3 or 4 step approach. What they do basically in the one-step, those who do the one-step approach is they note where the bar is by touching it before they jump. Those who do a 3 or 4 step approach just have practiced enough in a way that they can back off from the bar X number of steps and then make their approach at it.
And I think you'll all agree that that is just pretty amazing. In Major League Baseball this afternoon, Pittsburgh defeated the Montreal Expos 7-6. The Pirates got the winning run in the bottom of the 9th inning with 2 men out. Elias Sousa took the loss for the Expos. The New York Mets over Chicago 9-4. St. Louis defeated Philadelphia 3-2. San Francisco 4, Cincinnati 2. And in the American League, Milwaukee got by the New York Yankees 4-3. Cleveland took Boston 3-0. Texas over Detroit 8-2. One game just starting, Baltimore and Chicago. Tonight, the Toronto Blue Jays play in Kansas City. 22-year-old Jack Renner has the lead after 3 rounds of the Greater Greensboro Open Golf Tournament. Renner shot a 70 today for a 209 total. That's one better than Bobby Watkins, who is Lanny Watkins' younger brother. Veteran Gary Player is third at 212. Another veteran, Jack Nicklaus, passed up this week's tournament. He's been having problems this year and is trying to get ready for the Masters, scheduled to open next week.
Jack Nicklaus is a distant 74th on the PGA money-winning list in 1979, but he still looms as a top contender for the Masters. Practicing at the Augusta National Golf Club recently, Nicklaus talked about his game.
I felt like I was hitting the ball well the last couple of tournaments, but just couldn't put together a score. But I think a lot of the hitting the ball well and being to, it sound funny, utilize that has been difficult for me. But I think a lot of it is due to the aiming process, which I've had this year. And I've been aiming, with all the wind, I generally play a lot of right-to-left golf, and that gets me aiming right. And I've never been a good right-to-left player. I've always played much better aiming to the left of the target and working to the target. What I'm really concerned about is playing and not being ready to play and getting in too many bad habits. Sure, I'm going to have to play some golf, but very little, just enough to keep my hand in so that when I do get ready in the springtime, that I'm not totally out of the game, but I get back into it, you know, and I expect to take 3 or 4 tournaments to get back into it. I'm going to stick pretty much by the schedule, I think, that I've set this year, and I think that there's been nothing wrong with the schedule. Schedule has had nothing to do with my golf game. I've just played lousy. I'm quite happy with the progress I'm making as far as striking the ball, and of course that's why I'm here. I'm here to work a little bit on my game, work a little bit on getting used to the golf course, and hopefully get ready for the Masters.
Jim Boyce and Gabe Rona have advanced to the men's finals at the Clark Dairy Grand Prix tennis tournament at the OAC today. They'll meet at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at the Ottawa Athletic Club again. The women's final matches Shawnee Turk and Jana Klieper. It gets underway at noon. That's sports. Bruce returns right after this break.
It's a sun tire in the summer, it's a rain tire spring and fall, it's a traction tire in winter, it's the one that does it all. Goodyear's new Tiempo for all seasons, for all year. It holds on rain-slick roads, yet runs quiet in the clear.
Tiempo is a tough double steel belted radial with a special tread design for all kinds of weather.
Rain tire, sun tire, one tire Tiempo does it all.
Well, we finished most of Charlie's seating.
Hey, come on over to our place. Dad's got a few beer on ice.
Sounds great.
For years, the folks around these parts have given a guy a hand and shared a little Molson Export Ale.
Well, I called the girls to come over for supper.
Terrific. That means we can leave the tractors here for the...
How's that leg, Charlie?
Oh, it's getting along. Say, I sure do owe you guys a vote of thanks.
Hey, what are friends for, eh, Charlie?
Molson Export Ale. It keeps on tasting great.
It's good to know you've a place to go in the summer rains or the winter snows. It's good to know there's someone there to lend a hand, to take good care. It's good to know Royal Insurance, 'cause it's good to know you're with the best.
At Royal Insurance, we insure more homes, cars, and businesses than anyone else in Canada. Ask your independent agent about Royal.
'Cause it's good to know you're with the best.
Zenith announces Super Value Days. Super values on popular color portables. Super values on a choice of 26-inch Zenith color consoles in 3 popular fine furniture styles. And an extra special value on a brand new 20-inch with color Sentry. See your participating Zenith dealer now for all his super values during Zenith Super Value Days.
Preschoolers all over the world are an appealing age group, but there's probably no nation in the world which tries to program their activities so much. We have a report from Jim Laurie.
When visitors are taken to Chinese schools, and they almost always are, the results are inevitable. China wins new friends.
One gets the impression that the Chinese know they have a secret weapon in winning the world, and that weapon is their children.
At Peking's number 4 kindergarten, the kids are trotted out to greet foreign guests with shouts of "Welcome, Uncle." But it's not all cuteness and goodwill. There's a steely discipline to be found among these 4- and 5-year-old children of government and factory managers.